A tastemaker would be someone influential, and they're creative, original, and someone who, would think outside of the box a little bit, and who's a little bit crazier than usual.
Well, tastemaker is somebody who has turned what they love into their career.
And obviously someone that's made something that people also enjoy and love, and equally as much as the brand.
Suppose it's somebody who sets certain standards for flavors, I suppose, or it could be an object of beauty. So it's sight and sound and flavor, I suspect.
I would define a tastemaker as someone who is passionate about what they do, and they have very clear purpose of what they want to achieve in life.
To me, the definition is kind of broad, but in order to be a good tastemaker, I think that you have to be able to take your clients' considerations into advisement. You've got to be able to understand a brief. But beyond that, I think a tastemaker is something that you're born with.
They're able to influence certain things that's happening around, not just a small group of people, but a pretty large group of people. There is an impact to what they do, and they look like they have a lot of fun doing it.
In my opinion, a tastemaker is really an opinion leader, someone who is able to influence society and take the industry that he or she is working in to a higher level.
I think a tastemaker is someone that helps guide people in developing a taste for the finer and fashionable things in life.
A panel of 4 judges was formed, to come up with the Malaysian tastemakers. These are experts in the lifestyle area, and then out of them, we actually select 8 finalists.
I think if you look at the list, one thing that's very interesting is the way in which they have combined their Asian heritage with the way that they have pursued their business.
But beyond that, and I think this is the reason why they're in this list, is that they've managed to create truly engaging brands. Each one of them managed to put in their own particular point of view and personality into the activities that we take for granted.
They have changed people's perceptions of the industry they involved, especially Benjamin and Wondermark. They have created a very unique F&B phenomenon in Klang Valley. And I think creativity is very important for a country to grow, and is also especially in a constantly changing world.
I'm the designer for the women's wear label Ong Shanmugam. We are very young, at about 2.5 years old, a label that's based in Singapore. I would say right now, we're probably one of the most exciting, emerging Asian fashion brands. When I try to ask myself, is there someone out there who is creating Asian women's wear that is authentic, yet at the same time representative, experimental, and very forward-thinking? I couldn't find an answer from just thinking about it, that I wanted to create a brand that knew at its core that it was Asian, but was not afraid of going beyond that and questioning what it means to be Asian.
Wondermark is an F&B establishment. We run a cafe, a restaurant, and also a cupcake bakery. We made cupcakes back home in 2006. It was like a hobby, just baking cupcakes and then doing some designs on it just for friends and family's birthdays. And we happened to post it on a blog, and then a lot of people called us in asking about, could you make some for me for my friends' birthdays and stuff like that. So it grew from there, and then unintentionally we started the craze again, the cupcake craze here in Malaysia.
I run the big group. We basically operate a chain of restaurants and a supermarket called Ben's Independent Grocer. What we try to do is basically celebrate all things food and merge that into lifestyle. So everyday things, from grocery shopping to grabbing a cup of coffee to having a meal and a big night out.
It all started in 2009. Chantel and I met in the same year, and we just love arts and crafts. And in that same year, we made headbands to go to a Lady Gaga concert. In the beginning, we ordered some headbands online, and when they arrived, they were really badly made, so we decided to make the headbands ourselves.
Yeah, and everyone kept coming up to us and asking us, like, where'd you get headbands from? And we were like, oh, we made them. And they were like, oh, you should think about selling them. And we thought, that's a crazy idea.
And somebody encouraged us to set up an online store, and that's how we started. So until today, we still have our online store.
Yeah, we kind of think it was like a hobby gone wild.
Yeah.
I actually started off as an entrepreneur, when I was 20 years old. So I was actually studying engineering back then, and I was looking for something out of the box. Since then, I've started up multiple businesses. So Groupon acquired my company, one of my companies, in 2011, and I've been with Groupon since. So what Groupon does is we work with merchants, provide win-win offerings to customers. So mainly from like restaurant offers to travel and hotel packages.
I'm a singer-songwriter, and also I run a clothing store in Malaysia. I'm trying to do everything at once, but mainly I'm a singer-songwriter, and I love photography as well. I love painting, I love fashion. I don't know everything about creativity. I always try to look for a new way to express my creativities.
My name is Nga Yuan, and I'm the head of Kakisani right now. And Kakisani is a non-profit organization that deals with promoting the arts, promoting performing arts. When we first started Kakisani, the entire objective, the idea was that we shouldn't let something as good as this come to an end. The original founders had to leave the country, and therefore they was going to close the entire Kakisani. And we thought that what a waste. We had no plans whatsoever. We just came in and we say, let us do it. And they say, okay. We signed a contract, and voila, that's how we took over.
I started out as a visual merchandiser in Hong Kong. So I worked with the Peta Group and with Lane Crawford and with Joyce. And then from there I moved to Malaysia and I started my own kind of creative agency. It started out with just doing interior design, but now I've branched out into doing creative consulting. I also have a wedding business where I do wedding setups. And now I'm starting to branch out into property development and property investment. So it has a lot to do with creativity and kind of branching out across all those different formats.
Priscilla's been getting a lot of attention in Singapore actually. Every other fashion event has had her presence. People are a bit confused because I think people are thinking that she's actually a Singapore designer, but she's just based here. She's been getting a lot of attention because her work really is quite unique, because it's quite tricky to combine kind of Asian elements into modern clothes and make them quite wearable and desirable. I think Priscilla manages to kind of like capture that very fine balance between clothes that women want, but yet they have an intellectual kind of slant to them, which is quite interesting.
I think my way of working is quite, I would say, different. It may not always be the correct way of doing things, but it doesn't matter to me. I just focus on getting there. Strangely, I don't think too much of the design when I start. I'm usually thinking of an idea, a theme, and sometimes even a very strong message that I want to tackle. And then I start reading up on it. Another important aspect of my creative process is sourcing for fabrics. I would usually take a couple of trips all over Asia. I don't have a clear idea of the designs already. There's that sense of discovery and the unknown. I like knowing that everything was created in just a very intimate space and time. I think there's something quite quite magical about that?
Firstly, I'm not from here. I'm from Singapore. My wife actually came. We came to KL. The first stop we had was this Publica. Earlier we had lunch here. We had the Mr. Beef Steak, and my wife also ordered the salted caramella. And we also bought a bunch of stuff to bring back to Singapore. I would love for something like this to be available in Singapore.
Most of the partners in Wondermilk are graphic designers by training. We started doing graphic design for a few years. I think the transition between graphic design and cupcakes is similar because it involves design as well. Because before we started cupcakes, the design was a bit mundane and boring and a bit general. So we decided to inject something fresh. So we applied our design knowledge to make it a bit more fun and interesting. I guess it's a collective effort. Everybody comes from different background, but we travel together on holidays and stuff like that. So I guess, yeah, things that surround us are inspiration to develop our product further.
We have a motto, and it's like be seen or go home. So it's having fun and creating things that are
quirky and
loud sometimes, unexpected, bright, colourful. Initially, the first concept starts with Srini and I. We're usually sitting on a table exactly where we are right now. We have all the materials out. We usually come up with a theme first, and then we decide, okay,
what materials we're going to use.
Then it gets put into production, and it comes back. Some of them make it into the collection, some of them don't. But then we do bring the sin bin back out again when we design a new collection, because sometimes there was something there at the beginning, but we just didn't get it quite right. People think that it's easy making headbands, but it is a balance of colour, size, proportion.
Comfort as well.
Yeah. Definitely, I think the biggest thing would be being featured on Gossip Girl and Desperate Housewives. That, I think for both of us, was like an moment. We were like, okay, it's not a hobby anymore.
Because when we first started, we always talked about how amazing would it be if we had our headbands on Gossip Girl, because Gossip Girl was exactly where the headband craze started.
Yeah, and to have a scene where all of her minions were wearing, how many of her headbands? 3 of her headbands in one scene was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I've known Srini and Chantel for a really long time, almost 5 years, and they've inspired me, in terms of colors and patterns, and I always talk about how my collections inspired them. So it's kind of like a two-way thing. That kind of growth that we had over the years, it's a form of strong inspiration that both our brands believe in growth.
Joel inspires me to really believe in what I deem impossible myself. So he really makes me believe that people, especially Malaysians, can achieve great things, and I think that's a single most this biggest trait that really inspires me.
So success at work to me is about being very passionate about what you do, and enjoying what you do, and eventually the deeper meaning and the purpose of what you do is pretty important. Well, it was actually something simple that happened 1 year ago. So I bought my mom an iPad. So one day she came up to me after probably about 4 weeks using the iPad. So she was actually showing me the Groupon website, and she was telling me how her friends was using it and whether I knew about what this was about. So she didn't really know what I was doing before that. Actually, that was the moment when I actually shared with her that that's sort of like what I was doing. I think knowing that like today, like my mom and my dad is using what the business or the product that I've built with the team at Groupon is probably one of the proudest moments in my life.
Musically, I like to experiment with a lot of things. So I try to find all these other elements that could make a good pop song. For my second album, I try to fuse a lot of traditional instruments like the gamelan, and not only Malaysian traditional instruments, but also from Africa, from Brazil, and all this cool instruments that you don't really know about. I try not to be stuck on one singer-songwriter. I try to, because now I learn how to produce stuff too. So. And I love it, I love creating sounds.
Yuna's a singer-songwriter. She has an incredible voice, in my opinion, and she writes incredibly honest music. I mean, she's a photographer, she's super creative. She's a genuinely kind person who is really creative. I think she was born a creative person. I went with her to an event where there were 1,000 people that wanted to meet her, and she stuck around and was kind and genuine to every single person that wanted to meet her. Even though we were all completely exhausted, she has that big of a heart that she can, you know, go out there and just really care about her fans.
My inspiration for me kind of comes from like a million different places. I grew up reading comics, and I don't know if that makes sense to kind of what I'm doing now, but they teach you about scale and composition and things like that, and that's how I learned how to draw. And then from learning how to draw, I learned what kind of creative field I should kind of go into. A good designer will find the balance of how to take that brief and make it work. With me, I realize that as I look through most of my projects now, there's always some kind of sense of whimsy. There's always like a weird thing that I put into a corner. You've got to find that client's personality, find that one object, translate that into their home. And I think that's the key.
You know, Omar Khan is a very talented individual, a graduate of Parsons. He's very diverse. Basically, his strength is all about his taste in interior.
I think he's got a very fresh eye. He's obviously had exposure. I think he's done a lot of work in Hong Kong. What's relevant to my brand is that he loves fashion, I think, and he's so well-read. The fact that he has studied design and his love for fashion has just come together. It's a fresh approach. It's that certain young energy about him that I love.
There's always challenges in anything that anybody does. I think for us is basically, at the beginning, I think it was getting people to share the same vision that we have as a collective group of what we're trying to achieve as a business. So I think that links down to human resource a little bit. It was difficult to find people that's like-minded of what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do. It's not just another job. It's not something you come at 9 o'clock and you go home at 5 o'clock. It is so much more. You kind of need to want to be in that industry. You need to kind of believe in what we're trying to do and be passionate about it. And so I think that has become a lot easier today. But back then, I think that was one of the greatest challenges, selling the idea internally with people you want to be part of your team.
I actually identified 3 hurdles. So the first hurdle in my journey as an entrepreneur was actually my mom. So my mom being a teacher, it was very difficult to convince her what entrepreneurship was about and crossing the first hurdle. Then I found that I myself was the second hurdle. You know, it was actually having the confidence to continue doing what I believe was right and was adding value. And the third hurdle would then be the team members around me, yeah? And making sure that everyone's got a huge buy-in to a lot of the direction of the company and the business that we are building.
Well, in the beginning, we had issues with manpower because we've actually trained all the staff ourselves. So it was pretty difficult, looking for, say, headband sewers because
it doesn't exist.
We
kind of created a little market here.
Who do it. So that was our biggest issue in the beginning.
And also setting it up as a business because it was a hobby originally at the start. So in the beginning, it was just Serena and I sewing the headbands, and we thought, oh great, we'll sell headbands. But then as an order comes in, you have to think of logistics, sending it to the customer. So that was also another obstacle.
Yeah, packaging was another obstacle because we had to design packaging that was durable as well as light and also attractive at the same time.
Even opening our own shop here in the heart of Raffles Place, surrounded by all these towers and banks, was already quite a bold move that we took. We had no idea if we could even pay our rent past the 3-month mark. But we went ahead and did it. After we had signed the lease and had completed renovations, we probably had a couple of $1,000s left in the bank, and that was all we had. And it really could have gone downhill from there, but instead it went in the opposite direction. To me, that is always a very personal achievement.
I've been very lucky or very blessed because the way I look at things is that I see an opportunity in every problem. Everything I see, hey, there's a better way to do this. Every problem that I encounter, it's always like, yeah, this is a great reminder of what I could have done or didn't do. I always have problem answering what is your hurdles, because every hurdle takes me to the next place.
everything boils down to heritage for me. Because there's so many designers that I see that do modern things, or so many non-Malaysians that come back into Malaysia and start to design, and a lot of them get jobs because they're foreigners and because they have a certain standard that goes with it. But I think that if you grow up in Malaysia and that you are kind of, you know what Malaysians want, there's something to be said for that. And if you can design around that, or just kind of be intuitive about it, it goes a long way for you.
I think it's not just my heritage or my culture. I think it's a very Malaysian lifestyle. We all love food. We all love to eat, you know. I mean, every table conversation is always, you could be having dinner now and you're talking about the next meal. Where is the best wanton mee, or where's the best nasi lemak? It's a Malaysian thing that we are a little bit food obsessed, every one of us. I think more so, maybe my household, we have been very food centric. You know, the whole house lives around the kitchen. So maybe that puts me a little bit more centered to the food.
My culture and my heritage, you know, is a starting point for what I do, starting point for what the label does. But you know, the ironic thing is that I feel like I don't have a culture and I don't have a heritage in the strict sense. My lineage stretches from China all the way to India, and yet I was born and raised in Southeast Asia. We want to understand and respect that kind of diversity exists. When I first started out, I had a couple of people who wanted to sum up our work as East meets West. And I had to quickly interfere and say, no, that's not what it is. I like to call it contemporary Asian women's wear, simply because we are still playing within this continent.
I have a dream, and my dream is to make Bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad into a space that's a lot more sociable, a lot more accessible, a lot more friendly for both the arts and culture of this country, as well as for tourists or non-tourists or Malaysians. I think it's one of the most beautiful buildings in our country, or in fact in the world, and I like more people to touch its wall, more people to experience the building itself, and it's a project that I wanted to do for a long time.
We actually have a collection which is called the Borneo collection, where we use the Iban Kuat print as the base of a headband. Yeah, definitely the culture here in Borneo has influenced a lot of our designs.
And I mean, we're based here in Kuching and we would never think about making things anywhere else. I think, especially in East Malaysia, there is a culture. People love making things with their hands, be it cooking or, you know, making garments. Or,
yeah, people are very crafty here in Sarawak.
And we're just fortunate enough of where we're situated that there are, you know, we call them artisans because they are. They love creating things with their hands. We're lucky that we have a team of people that work with us that love making things as much as we do.
They've brought up the pulse of the nation so that it's buzzing with change and excitement. They've made Malaysians want to go out more, learn more, experience more, and explore more, really. And they do all that without alienating the Asian or Malaysian aesthetic, culture, and values. So really, they're trailblazers for the next generation of tastemakers.
One thing is certain, that they're gonna really trailblazing in the next couple of years, 10 or 20 years, because they're still very young. So, you know, we have to stay tuned what they're gonna achieve.